Hello everyone. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us today for this NFER Classroom Bite into Writing webinar, which is focused on planning for writing in the Year 6 curriculum. My name's Frances Brill and I'm from NFER's Centre for Assessment. And as some of you already know, this is the fourth in the series of Bite into Writing webinars, a series devoted to the important topic of teaching and assessing writing in Year 6. Back last November, we hosted the third webinar, which took an in-depth look at how to inspire young writers through using quality texts and the tasks and activities that are likely to promote quality writing. And then the first two webinars in the series, last spring and summer, were focused on assessment and included discussion on the process of assessing writing and how individual pieces of a pupil's writing can contribute to building a picture of assessment. For those who joined us for those previous events, it's great to have you with us once again. And for those who are joining for the first time today, we'd like to offer you a warm welcome to the NFER. In a moment, I'm going to say a little bit more about the theme of the webinar and introduce you to our panelists. But before I do that, just a brief word about the format for today's session. So in terms of timings, we've got a 40-minute presentation, followed by a quick word about the various ways that you can get in touch with NFER Classroom if you'd like to, and that will take us to the close of the event. Although today's session doesn't include a Q&A, we really welcome your questions. So you're welcome to get in touch with the NFER Classroom team after the webinar, and details of ways to do this will be available at the end of today's session. And finally, just a reminder that NFER will be recording the whole webinar so that this can be made available to you afterwards for your reference. Okay, so today's webinar is all about planning for writing in the Year 6 curriculum. And for this, I'm really pleased to say that we are again joined by Margaret Fennell and Jo Shackleton. Margaret and Jo are both experienced writing moderators, and they're also the authors of Bite into Writing, which is NFER's suite of writing resources for Year 6. Each Bite into Writing resource is based on a quality published text. So in this fourth webinar, they're going to offer an insight into how to support curriculum planning for Year 6 using the Bite into Writing approach. During the development of the Bite into Writing materials, I've worked very closely with Margaret and Jo. So before I hand over to them, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the authors themselves. So if we can have the next slide, please, then I just want to share with you some of the experiences that Margaret and Jo have had. So they've worked together for around 10 years now, and I'm sure you can see from this slide that between them, they've got a lot of experience to share. They've worked on behalf of England's Standards and Testing Agency on the national curriculum tests and on teacher assessment, where they help to develop exemplification, training and standardisation materials for local authority moderators. And above all, they're passionate about pupils' writing and about supporting the development of young writers, which is what led them in the first place to the creation of the Bite into Writing materials. So there's plenty to look forward to in this session, and I'm now going to hand over to Margaret and Jo, who are going to start us off by tackling the question of how to approach curriculum planning for writing in Year 6.
Thank you, Frances. And of course, you know, there are various ways of approaching your curriculum planning for writing. One approach, and we believe a particularly effective one, is to build a unit around a quality published text. So this is the approach we took in Bite into Writing, as Frances has said, NFER's new resource for Year 6. And in order to ensure a balanced range of quality texts, you can see on the slide there that we chose a short story called Olive's Army from the collection When We Were Warriors by Emma Carroll. We chose an illustrated non-fiction text about the first successful ascent of Everest called Everest, the remarkable story of Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay. And then thirdly, we chose a really powerful and inspiring novel by Susanna Bailey called Tanas Moon. And of course, there are many benefits in building your planning around whole class quality texts. So a whole class text provides a collective experience that can stimulate discussion and debate, as well as sparking ideas for writing. And the shared nature of the reading can provide support and challenge for all types of readers in your class, and enables you really to expose pupils to texts that they might not otherwise cope with independently. And of course, there are opportunities too to extend their vocabulary in the shared reading context. And because you're dealing with a longer text, it provides a sustained and extended experience rather than perhaps the more fragmented one that might be likely if you rely, for example, on extracts or images or short films. And the text itself, very helpfully, is a supportive framework for your own planning. And if it's a well-chosen text, there are likely to be plentiful opportunities to make those wider connections, for example, to other areas of the curriculum or to other reading. And we know how important it is to help pupils make those connections and to see the links between different aspects of their learning. So again, we focus very much on this invite into writing. We pull out, first of all, the thematic links that you can explore through, for example, discussion and role play. And if you adopt a cross-curricular approach in your school, we make explicit the opportunities to make links to other areas of the curriculum, such as art or history, geography or science. And we all understand the importance of wider reading, both fiction and non-fiction, not least so pupils can make comparisons across books. And we know that's a specific national curriculum requirement for Upper Key Stage 2. So for that reason, we offer a list of suggested wider reading texts that complement the quality published text in each Bite into Writing book. So let's just see how this might work. For example, Olive's Army in When We Were Warriors, the quality published text in book 1. It's set during World War II, so it complements a study of that period in history. And that would include the evacuation of children in England, typically from the dangers of the cities to the more relative safety of the countryside. And also the plight of refugees from Nazi Germany via the Kindertransport. And there are obvious themes such as friendship, loyalty, and bravery to be explored. And in terms of wider reading, you can see here how, for example, you could trace the development of some of the characters in Olive's Army in the story's prequel, which is Letters from the Lighthouse, Emma Carroll's novel. You can see there that lots of schools have on their bookshelves. Or you could make links to the other 2 stories in the collection, because the 3 short stories in When We Were Warriors do have some links, and there are connections, quite clever connections between them. But there's a wide selection of other books that you could explore that feature children during World War II, perhaps children as evacuees, Goodnight Mr. Tom, or the Michael Moore Pogo's novel Friend or Foe, or children as refugees, or even the wonderful, amazing story of Adolphus Tips, which explores children down in Devon who had to be moved out of their village so the American servicemen could practice for the D-Day landings on Slapton Sands. So a whole range of wider reading there that provides a really rich source of comparison to Olive's Army. And in terms of Everest, well, that's a very different kind of book, being illustrated non-fiction and deploying an array of presentational features. But despite being non-fiction, it does contain a strong narrative element. So naturally, in terms of its content, there are strong links to geography and science. as well as opportunities to explore the book through the artwork. And the obvious themes again are friendship, but also teamwork. And there are so many fiction and non-fiction books that can be explored for comparative purposes. So, for example, Shackleton's Journey There by William Grill is already used in many, many schools and sits very well alongside Everest. I know some schools use that in Year 5 and then perhaps Everest in Year 6. Or there's Jess Butterworth's novel, When the Mountains Roared, which is again set in the Himalayas. Or there are fiction and non-fiction texts, you can see 2 of them here, that explore mythical creatures, and that they would complement the section in Everest about the legendary Yeti. And similarly, in Tanas Moon, well, this novel explores themes such as friendship, but also family relationships, as well as humankind's treatment of the natural world and the natural environment. So we could make links to science, as well as to citizenship and PSHE. And there are some superb novels and non-fiction texts that you can dip into, or that pupils could read independently, that explore similar themes. Or you might perhaps consider an author study. We're looking here on this slide at other books written by Susanna Bailey. So there's Snowfall, her first novel, and Raven Winter, her most recent novel. And the thread across those 3 novels really is, I suppose, the way she presents children interacting with wild creatures and the healing power of nature. So again, rich opportunities to make comparisons across books.
Thanks, Jo. So just following on now from what Jo has said, planning your writing curriculum around a quality shared text clearly has many benefits. And another major advantage is that, of course, it can offer a really integrated approach to teaching and learning. And this not only saves time on your planning, but it can weave together those key areas of literacy, those areas of reading and talk and writing, and this all helps to foster a more creative and a very cohesive approach to learning. So, as you can see in the diagram, assessment, and that's both formative and summative assessment, always feeds back into teaching and learning so that the whole process is cyclical. And it's this multifaceted approach that is really at the heart of each of the Bite into Writing books. Now, of course, you'll all know that shared and guided reading are the perfect catalysts for stimulating discussion. And this really helps to secure a deeper understanding for pupils of the text, but it also helps to spark their ideas for writing. And in the Bite into Writing books, we have what we called a talk and explore section. And this is a thread that's linked to either a few chapters or sections of the quality published text, and it runs through each book and offers a wide range of questions and activities which support reading comprehension. And you can see some of these on the slide in the thought bubbles. So, for example, you might choose to involve the whole class in drama activities such as hot seating or role play. For example, the role play the conversation between Hilary and Tenzing in the tent on the night before their final ascent of Everest. Or you might use group work to engage pupils in discussion and debate. There are also opportunities for research and investigation, for example, through exploring thematic links or discussing the meaning and effect of vocabulary. And then, of course, there are questions and activities that support the development of those higher reading skills, such as inference, comparison and prediction. And this will help you to assess and plan for individual pupils' next steps in learning. And then, of course, as pupils continue to explore the quality text or any text, you'll want to plan in opportunities for writing. And so it's a really good idea to start with short pieces of incidental writing, because that will help your pupils to capture their ideas that come out of the discussion, the debate. And these can then be banked and they can draw on them when they start planning a more extended piece of writing. So again, we have what we call write bites in Bite into Writing, which follow on from the talk and explore activities. And this is an extensive range of ideas for this incidental writing, to ensure plenty of choice and to offer different levels of challenge. So again, you can see some of these on the slide. For example, postcards, perhaps snippets of conversation through speech and thought bubbles, short descriptions, and much more. And then this incidental writing can really help pupils to develop their ideas further. So, for example, speech and thought bubbles might then be expanded into a longer dialogue, or perhaps an internal monologue, or even a play script, while, say, postcards and emails might then form the basis of a more detailed letter. And it's so important to provide pupils with a range of extended writing opportunities, and really to ensure that they can showcase their skills in writing for different purposes and audiences, and both formal and informal. And you'll want to make sure that they can apply these skills in both their fiction and their non-fiction writing. So planning opportunities for both is essential. And we've sometimes found that during external moderation, that when pupils have been given more limited opportunities to write a range of text types, and particularly for more formal audiences and purposes, it can just prevent them from meeting the standard that they are clearly capable of achieving. So, to support planning for assessment, each of the Bite into Writing books includes a wide range of extended, what we call showcase writing tasks. And these cover both fiction and non-fiction, and they require various levels of formality. And they're very much designed to be used flexibly, with plenty of choice, which enables pupils to very much tailor their writing to their own level of challenge and to their own interests. And you can see, you see some of the examples there on the slide from pupils who've used the Bite into Writing materials. Of course, as well as planning your teaching and learning for the term or year, planning when and how to assess is also important. And it's always beneficial to team up with colleagues, either within or across schools, to talk through and moderate your judgments. So, again, with this in mind, each Bite into Writing book, in each book, we have included 3 sets of writing exemplars from pupils who have used the materials. And you can see a few examples on the screen there. Each set of exemplars is fully annotated and includes an overall commentary detailing how the individual pieces of writing contribute to one of the national standards, those of working towards the expected standard, working at the expected standard, or working at greater depth. And then to feed into the cyclical nature of the teaching and learning process, just as we looked at on an earlier slide, each commentary includes suggested next steps to support further planning for learning for that pupil.
Yes, and I think that was a really powerful point that Margaret made about the potential consequences of pupils being given limited opportunities to write for different audiences and purposes, because I recall we did see that. So in terms of your curriculum planning, you'll definitely want to map the opportunities to expose your pupils to a wide range of different text types. And you'll want to do this at the very start of the year so that you're not leaving it and finding out too late that they actually haven't had that exposure. And that, of course, will support them in writing for different purposes and different audiences, including those more formal ones. So how you do this is up to you. We'd advocate teaching the writer's craft through modelled writing. In other words, reading as a writer, writing as a reader, that explicit demonstration of writing. And we provide a range of different text types across the 3 Bite into Writing books through what we call spotlight texts, because we say they shine a spotlight on the writer's craft. And there are 6 in total, 2 in each book, and they include a short narrative, a formal incident report, a promotional persuasive leaflet, an information text, which is the one you can see here on this slide, a newspaper article, and a letter about the sighting of the Yeti. Now, I know a letter isn't a text type as such, it's a format. We do talk about text types, but we know that most texts are actually hybrids. And the letter we include is very interesting because it merges recount with description and persuasion. So we think very interesting in terms of unpicking text types from that point of view, with an eye very much on purpose and audience. So these spotlight texts, 6 of them, as we said, across the 3 books, are all linked to the quality published text, but they can also stand alone for discrete teaching, either with the whole class using shared and model writing, or as guided group work, perhaps. And you can explore through them the writer's craft by teaching grammar in context, including the way the texts are organised and structured, the vocabulary choices made, and the writer's voice or viewpoint. And when planning for Year 6, of course you're going to want to retain a good degree of flexibility. You'll be wanting to respond to your assessment information, your assessment intelligence, and adapt your teaching to address your pupils' needs. So flexibility is really key to the approach we take in Bite into Writing. It is not a prescriptive scheme of work, but it does provide a highly supportive yet versatile framework for your planning. So in terms of how you might use the books across Year 6, well, you can use 1, 2, or all 3 of the Bite into Writing books across the academic year. We would say that each book could provide up to a term's work, depending on whether you choose to take advantage of some of the wider connections, the thematic, the cross-curricular links, and the wider reading. So there's just some examples here to show you how they could be used, how they have been used. The first example you can see there uses 1 book per term in book order, book 1, 2, and then 3. And that gives the teacher time to exploit the wider links alongside the quality published texts and the spotlight texts. And the next example there uses 2 of the books, 1 fiction and 1 non-fiction, during the spring term, with a focus on providing a good range of writing opportunities in time for teacher assessment and moderation. And then the third example there uses all 3 books, but allows time in the first term, in the autumn term, that longer term, to explore the thematic and wider curricular links in book 2, the non-fiction text, whilst leaving time during the spring and summer terms for other teaching. Again, that flexibility. And then the final example there, again, uses 2 books. Book 1 during the spring term, generating a range of writing for teacher assessment, and book 3 during the summer term, supporting secondary transition. But of course, they are just examples. And we just wanted to share some words with you from a teacher who has used all 3 books with his Year 6 class last year. And he really appreciated their flexibility. He told us he liked the fact that they're not a one-size-fits-all. And you can see here how he talks about the way Bite into Writing helped him to develop the way he wanted to organise and plan and teach English in his school. And if you'd like to read more, he has written a whole case study testimonial about the way he used Bite into Writing and how he used those books across the school year. You can see that case study on the NFER website.
Jo and Margaret, thanks so much for bringing great insight into curriculum planning for Year 6 writing, using that integrated approach and bringing together opportunities for reading, writing and assessment. And I think on the previous slide, we've got another quotation which we were just keen to share with you about the Bite into Writing resource, which was given by Pi Corbett. And we put this quotation on the Bite into Writing pages of the NFER website because we think it draws attention to these very links that Jo and Margaret were discussing and talking about and explaining during that presentation. Okay, so our time today, unfortunately, is drawing to a close. And speaking of the NFER website, on this slide, you can see the ways that you can get in touch and keep in touch with NFER Classroom and access updates on Bite into Writing if you'd like to, via Twitter, the NFER website itself, and by signing up to our newsletter if you'd like to do that. You'll also find recordings of the 3 previous Bite into Writing webinars and other associated writing resources available from the NFER website. Just search on Bite into Writing and those should come up for you. As I mentioned earlier, if you have any questions or comments about today's webinar, you're more than welcome to email the NFER Classroom team, and you'll find us at that address which is given at the bottom of this slide, so nfer.classroom@nfer.ac.uk. So it just reminds me now to thank Jo and Margaret very much again for their time today, and also to thank everyone who's joined us for attending and for participating. We hope to welcome you back to the NFER sometime soon. Bye-bye.